Every species at the Galactic Combat Academy had claws, armor, or psychic weapons except humans. What we didn't realize was that Earth had already trained them by trying to kill them for millions of years. The first time I saw Jake Brennan walk through the reinforced doors of Threshold 7's main hall, I honestly thought someone had sent us a civilian by mistake. My name is Veltar, and I have been documenting species integration at the Galaxian Combat Academy for the past 11 cycles. I have seen Crovenians crack steel with their bare claws. I have watched Zephyrians manipulate gravity fields during sparring sessions. I have even witnessed a Thornback student accidentally impale 3 training dummies because he sneezed. But humans? Humans were new to our little collection of apex predators and warrior races, and let me tell you, they did not look the part. Jake stood maybe 6 feet tall, which is average for his species apparently. Brown hair, brown eyes, medium build. Nothing about him screamed danger. He wore the standard academy jumpsuit, carried a single duffel bag, and had this expression on his face that I can only describe as mildly interested, like he was touring a museum, not enrolling in the most prestigious combat institution in the known galaxy. I adjusted my data pad with my upper left hand, while my lower right hand scratched notes. First human student, check. Appears physically unremarkable, check. Survival probability in first week training, questionable at best, check. Threshold 7 floated in neutral space, a massive station built specifically to house and train the galaxy's best warriors. We had students from 47 different species, each one representing the peak of their evolutionary development. The Crovenians brought their famous durability and strength. The Silicates brought their crystalline armor plating. The Vexnar brought their psychic combat abilities. Every species had something that made them dangerous, something that earned them a spot here. The humans brought, well, we were not entirely sure what they brought. Command had been very secretive about the whole thing. Earth had only made contact with the Galactic Council 3 years ago, and suddenly we were accepting their youth into our combat programs. It seemed rushed, foolish even. I had reviewed the biological data we had on humans: fragile skeletal structure, thin skin that tears easily, no natural armor, no venom, no claws, no enhanced senses. They came from a planet with barely 1 standard gravity, 1.0. My homeworld has 2.3. And we are considered a medium gravity species. But orders were orders, and the council wanted integration, so integration they would get. Jake walked past a group of Crovenian students who towered over him by at least 3 feet. They glanced down at him with barely concealed amusement. One of them, Thaximal, I would later learn his name very well, actually snorted. The sound came out like a boulder rolling down a metal hill. Jake did not even look up. He just kept walking, dragging his bag behind him with one hand. "Hey, tiny thing," Thaximal called out in broken common galactic. "You lost. Civilian quarters are 3 levels down." A few other students chittered and hissed with laughter. Different species, same cruel sense of humor. Jake stopped, turned slightly, gave Thaximal a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Nope," he said simply, "right where I need to be." Then he continued walking. I recorded the interaction with clinical detachment. Subject displays confidence despite obvious physical disadvantage. Possible overcompensation for awareness of vulnerability. Prognosis remains poor. The academy had seen hundreds of students wash out in their first month. Combat training here was not for the weak. We did not coddle, we did not hold back. You either adapted or you went home. Sometimes you went home in pieces. But that was what the medical regeneration tanks were for. I gave Jake Brennan maybe 2 weeks before he requested a transfer. Turns out, I was wrong about a lot of things. The cafeteria incident happened on day 4. 4 days. That was all it took for everything we thought we knew to get violently rearranged. I was sitting 3 tables away documenting feeding habits of the Silicate students when I heard Thaximal's voice booming across the dining hall. Again, the Crovenian had apparently decided that Jake was his new favorite target for entertainment, and let me tell you, Crovenians do not do subtle. Picture a creature that evolution designed specifically to kill things and survive everything. 8 feet tall, covered in overlapping plates of natural armor that could deflect most energy weapons. 4 arms, each one capable of lifting half a ton. A jaw structure that could bite through titanium alloy. Crovenians came from a planet where everything wanted to eat everything else, and they had clawed their way to the top of that particular food chain through sheer bloody-minded durability. Thaximal was big, even for a Crovenian, and he had spent the last 4 days making Jake's life miserable. Small things at first. Knocking Jake's tray out of his hands, blocking doorways, making loud comments about fragile little Deathworlders who did not belong here. The usual bully routine, just scaled up to interstellar proportions. Jake had ignored all of it. Every single incident he just cleaned up the mess, went around the obstacle, kept his head down. I had noted this behavior with approval. The human understood his limitations. Smart, except, as I was about to learn, I had completely misread the situation. "Hey, soft skin," Thaximal bellowed, his translator unit making his words echo across the cafeteria. "I am talking to you." Jake was sitting alone eating something brown and vaguely concerning from Earth's cuisine selection. He did not look up, just kept eating. Thaximal stomped over. Each footfall made the floor plates vibrate. He reached down with one of his massive claws and grabbed Jake's tray, lifting it up and tilting it. Food splattered across the table and onto Jake's jumpsuit. "Oops," Thaximal said, his lipless mouth pulling back to show rows of serrated teeth. "Clumsy me." The cafeteria had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. This was a moment. You could feel it in the air. The new student, the weak one, was being tested. He would either submit, or he would fight and get destroyed. Those were the only two options we had seen play out hundreds of times before. Jake stood up slowly. He was still shorter than Thaximal by more than 2 feet, still looked like a stiff breeze could knock him over, still had that same mild, almost bored expression on his face. "That was my lunch," Jake said quietly. "So?" Thaximal leaned down, bringing his face close to Jake's. "What are you going to do about it, little mammal?" I adjusted my datapad to record. This was either going to be a quick submission, or a brutal lesson in why humans did not belong at combat academies. Either way, documentation was important. Jake sighed. Actually sighed. Like this whole thing was just mildly inconvenient. "I am going to ask you once to apologize and get me a new tray," Jake said. The cafeteria were abutted in various species-specific sounds of amusement. Even I felt my mandibles twitch. The human had to be joking. Thaximal laughed. A sound like gravel in a processing unit. "Or what?" Jake's expression did not change. "Or I will make you apologize." That was when Thaximal made his mistake. He reached out with one massive claw to shove Jake backward, to put the little human in his place. To end this farce, Jake moved. I do not have words adequate to describe what happened next, but I will try. One moment Thaximal was reaching forward. The next moment, Jake's fist was buried in the Krovanian's armored faceplate with a sound like a shuttle crash. Not a slap. Not a push. A full force, closed fist punch that traveled maybe 8 inches and carried behind it every single pound of force that human Deathworld muscles could generate. Thaximal's head snapped back so hard I heard his neck vertebrae crack. His body followed. All 8 feet and 600 pounds of apex predator, lifted completely off the ground and sent flying backward through the air. He hit a table 10 feet away, smashed through it and slid another 5 feet before stopping in a crumpled heap of twitching limbs and shattered armor plating. The sound of the impact echoed off the walls. Then, silence. Complete, absolute, suffocating silence. Jake stood there, hands still extended, knuckles not even bruised. He looked down at Thaximal, then at his own fist, then back at the unconscious Krovanian. "Huh," he said mildly. I actually held back too. My datapad slipped from my upper hand and clattered on the floor. Around the cafeteria, students from 47 different species all had the exact same expression. The universal look of beings who had just realized they had catastrophically miscalculated something very, very important. A Vexnar student near me whispered something in their native tongue. My translator rendered it as, "What in the burning void was that?" I did not have an answer. Jake calmly walked over to the food dispensers and got himself a new tray. Nobody moved to stop him. The medical bay descended into controlled chaos approximately 4 minutes after the punch. I followed the emergency response team, datapad clutched in all 4 hands, scientific curiosity overriding my sense of self-preservation. 3 medtechs, 2 silicate orderlies, and 1 very concerned physician named Krelvox were already swarming around Thaximal's unconscious body when I arrived. "Get me a bone regenerator," Krelvox snapped, his tentacles moving in agitated patterns. "And someone find out what hit him." Feels like he argued with a cargo shuttle. It was a human, one of the orderlies offered helpfully. Krelvox stopped mid-examination. All 6 of his eye stalks swiveled toward the orderly. "Repeat that." "A human punched him, sir. Once. Just the one time." The physician's skin color shifted through 3 shades of disbelief before settling on a queasy purple. He returned his attention to Thaximal, scanning with increased intensity. I moved closer, recording everything. Fractured facial plate in 7 locations, Krelvox muttered, reading off his medical scanner. Severe concussion, possibly 3 separate impact points as the brain rebounded inside the skull, 2 cracked vertebrae in the neck, damage to the equilibrium organs, torn musculature in the upper back from whiplash effect, shock trauma across his entire nervous system. He paused, running the scanner again as if he did not believe his own readings. This Krovinian was hit with enough force to stop a ground vehicle. You are telling me a human did this? With his hand? An unaugmented organic hand? Yes, sir. I interjected, holding up my datapad. I have visual documentation. The human, Jake Brennan, punched him exactly once. Closed fist. Approximately 8-inch travel distance from shoulder rotation. The Krovinian was airborne for 0.7 seconds before impact with furniture. Krelvox's tentacles went limp. That is impossible. I have reviewed human biological data. They are Category 4 durability at best. Krovinians are Category 9. The structural integrity differential alone should have shattered every bone in the human's hand. About that, another medtech called from across the bay. Sir, the human is here. Administrative protocol requires medical examination of both parties involved in physical altercations. Jake Brennan sat on an examination table in the corner, looking bored. Krelvox approached him like someone approaching an unexploded munition. Cautious, respectful, possibly terrified. I need to scan your hand, the physician said carefully. Jake held it out. Sure. The scanner hummed. Krelvox stared at the readout, blinked all 6 eyes in sequence. Scanned again. This is medically nonsensical, he whispered. No fractures. No microfractures. No torn ligaments. No bruising. Not even inflammation. Your hand has less damage than if you had vigorously shaken someone's appendage in greeting. Yeah, Jake said. I pulled the punch at the last second. Didn't want to actually hurt him too badly. Every being in the medical bay froze. That was you pulling the punch. Krelvox's voice had climbed half an octave. Well, yeah. I mean, we are all supposed to be training together, right? Did not seem sporting to go full contact on day 4. I was writing notes so frantically that my datapad started overheating. This changed everything. Everything. If what the human said was accurate, if he had genuinely reduced the force of that catastrophic impact, then what were humans actually capable of at full strength? The medical bay doors hissed open and Academy Commandant Zixthrall stormed in, her crystalline exoskeleton clattering with agitation. Someone explained to me, she began, her voice resonating with barely controlled fury, why I have a Krovinian in critical condition, a human with 0 injuries, and 14 different species requesting immediate transfers away from human-occupied dormitories. Krelvox gestured helplessly at his medical readouts. Ma'am, I think we have severely, catastrophically, perhaps fatally underestimated what a Deathworld classification actually means. The commandant's gaze fixed on Jake, who gave a small, polite wave. How much gravity does your planet have, cadet? She demanded. About 9.8 meters per second squared, ma'am. In standard measurements. Oh. 1 standard G.98 technically. Zixthrall's exoskeleton actually creaked as her whole body tensed. So you are telling me that you come from a standard gravity world and you just hospitalized one of our most durable students with a casual punch? Jake shrugged. I mean, he did knock over my lunch. Seemed like a proportional response. I watched the commandant's face cycle through approximately 12 different emotions, none of them pleasant. Emergency staff meeting, she announced. Now, every department head, every combat instructor, every xenobiology specialist, we need to completely reassess our protocols. She pointed one rigid appendage at Jake. You, stay here. Do not touch anything. Do not sneeze aggressively. Do not flex. Just sit there and try not to accidentally destroy anything else. Jake nodded agreeably. As the commandant left, I heard her mutter something that my translator rendered as Galactic Council is going to have my exoskeleton for this. I did not sleep that night. Sleep could wait. Sleep was for researchers who were not sitting on the most significant xenobiological revelation in the last 3 centuries. My quarters were small, functional, covered wall-to-wall with projection screens displaying every piece of data about Earth I could access from the galactic archives. Some of it was recent, compiled during humanity's first contact. Most of it was raw planetary scan data that nobody had bothered to analyze in detail because, well, who cared about some random species from a backwater spiral arm? Turns out, we should have cared. I started with the basics. Earth's gravity registered at 0.98 standard G, just like Jake had said. Fine. Normal. Nothing alarming there. Atmosphere was nitrogen-oxygen mix, breathable standard stuff. Rotation period was 24 hours, well within comfortable parameters. On paper, Earth looked like a perfectly pleasant mid-level habitable world. Then I started looking at the details and my mandibles started clicking involuntarily, which is what my species does when we are nervous. Surface pressure, 1.0 atmospheres at sea level. I blinked at that reading. Checked it twice. Earth's atmospheric pressure was actually higher than standard. Not by much, but measurably higher. These humans were not just adapted to standard gravity, they were walking around in what most species would consider a slightly high-pressure environment. Every single moment of their lives, their bodies were compensating for atmospheric conditions that would give a Zephyrian a headache. Temperature variations -89 to +56 degrees Celsius in inhabited zones. I had to convert that 3 times because I thought my translator was malfunctioning. Humans lived in temperature swings that covered 145 degrees. Voluntarily, my homeworld's inhabited regions varied by maybe 30 degrees seasonally, and we considered that harsh. But that was just the beginning. I pulled up Earth's biological records and that was when things got truly disturbing. Estimated species count 8.7 million. Percentage classified as predatory, approximately 15%. I stared at that number. 15%. On my homeworld, predators made up maybe 2% of species, and we had a healthy, balanced ecosystem. Earth had more than 1 million predatory species, all competing for resources, all evolving increasingly efficient ways to kill. The database had helpfully included images. I scrolled through them with mounting horror. Bears that could decapitate prey with a single swipe. Cats, ranging from tiny ambush hunters to massive pack stalkers that could run down prey for miles. Crocodilians that had remained virtually unchanged for millions of years because their design was already perfect for killing. Sharks, with serrated teeth and electromagnetic prey detection. Snakes with venom that could drop a creature 3 times their size. Spiders, insects, fish, birds. Everything on this planet seemed designed to murder something else. And humans. Soft, fleshy, clawless humans had survived in the middle of all of this. No, not just survived, thrived, dominated, reached the top of the food chain despite having none of the natural weapons their competitors possessed. I opened the evolutionary biology files. Humans were persistence hunters. They did not have speed, so they just followed prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their cooling system, this thing called sweating, allowed them to keep moving in heat that would shut down most predators. They could track prey for days, not giving up, not stopping, just maintaining a steady pace that would make a Crovenian look like a quitter. Their skeletal structure was not fragile. I realized with growing unease. It was optimized, lightweight enough for endurance, dense enough to handle impact, and it healed. Oh, did it heal? Broken bones could regenerate stronger than before. Torn muscles rebuilt with additional capacity. Their bodies treated damage as a training stimulus. Then I found the really disturbing part. Humans had something called myostatin, a protein that limited muscle growth. Limited it. Their bodies naturally restricted how strong they could become because without that restriction, their muscles would grow until they tore themselves apart or shattered their own bones. They had a biological safety mechanism to prevent them from accidentally becoming too dangerous. Jake had not been bragging when he said he pulled that punch. He was being literal. Every human walked around with built-in limiters, their own bodies constantly holding back their true potential because the alternative was self-destruction. And even with those limiters, even operating at a fraction of what they were theoretically capable of, Jake had nearly killed a Crovenian with a single hit. I found medical records of something called hysterical strength, cases where humans in extreme situations temporarily bypassed their limiters. A female human lifting a ground vehicle off her offspring. A male human tearing a reinforced door off its hinges to escape a fire. There were psychological studies too. Humans had persistence, mental endurance that bordered on irrational. They did not quit. Their brains released chemicals that numbed pain and enhanced focus during stress. They could function through injuries that would incapacitate most species. One phrase kept appearing in the xenoanthropology reports, adaptable to the point of absurdity. Humans could eat an incredible variety of foods, including things that were mildly toxic to them. They just developed stronger digestive systems. They could survive in extreme climates by simply wearing different clothing. They could adjust to different gravity levels within weeks. They healed from almost anything given enough time. They were not specialized for any particular environment, which meant they could function adequately in nearly every environment. They adapted, evolved, learned, built tools, formed social groups, kept going with a stubbornness that made Crovenian durability look like casual commitment. I pulled up the cafeteria footage again, watching Jake's punch in slow motion. He had not even planted his feet properly. His form was casual, almost lazy. He had rotated his shoulder, extended his arm, and casually delivered enough kinetic energy to launch a 600-pound armored predator across the room. And he called that holding back. I started writing a new report, my hands trembling slightly. Subject: immediate review of human species classification. Recommendation: upgrade threat assessment from Category 4 to Category 10 pending further analysis. Note: we did not recruit a student. We recruited an apex predator that does not look like one. The academy changed overnight, and I do not mean that metaphorically. By the next morning cycle, there were new protocols posted on every comm board, transmitted to every datapad, and announced in 6 different linguistic formats to ensure absolutely nobody missed them. Revised safety protocol. Human interaction guidelines. Do not antagonize human students. Do not physically challenge human students unless in supervised training environments. Do not assume human physical limitations based on visual assessment. Do not engage in strength competitions with human students. Report any signs of human distress to medical staff immediately. As species operates on delayed pain response system. Maintain respectful distance during human feeding times, as species may have territorial food guarding instincts. I watched Commandant Zixthral post these herself, her crystalline frame radiating an emotion my translator could not quite identify. Embarrassment maybe. Or existential dread. The combat training schedule got completely restructured. Humans were moved to their own category, separated from the standard durability classifications. Jake suddenly found himself training alone for the first 3 hours of each session while instructors frantically redesigned programs that would not result in dead Crovenians. Chief Combat Instructor Rax Ven, a grizzled veteran who had survived 16 campaigns and 3 separate assassination attempts, approached Jake with the kind of careful respect usually reserved for unstable explosives. "Cadet Brennan," he said, his translator rendering his growling speech into flat common. "We need to establish your baseline capabilities before integrating you into group exercises." Jake nodded. "Sure thing, sir. Please demonstrate a standard punch against this impact meter. Use approximately 25% of your maximum force." Jake looked uncertain. 25% is kind of hard to judge, sir." Raxvan's scales rippled with what I had learned to recognize as suppressed panic. "Then use whatever feels comfortable. Light contact. Casual effort." Jake shrugged and tapped the impact meter with his fist. The device registered 4,700 newtons and immediately flagged the reading as a sensor malfunction. Raxven stared at it. Reset it. Had Jake punch it again. Same result. The instructor dismissed the class early and went directly to the commandant's office. I heard later that he requested a leave of absence for psychological counseling, but the really interesting changes were not administrative. They were social. Students who had ignored Jake before now gave him a wide berth in corridors. The Crovenians especially developed a sudden fascination with floor patterns whenever he walked past. Thaxmal, released from medical after 3 days of intensive regeneration therapy, took one look at Jake in the dormitory common area, turned around and found somewhere else to be. Jake seemed genuinely confused by all of it. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked me one day in the research library. He had started seeking me out, apparently deciding that the 4-armed note-taking observer was less intimidating than most other students. "You hospitalized the academy's most aggressive bully with a single punch," I replied, not looking up from my data analysis. "You have inspired a terror response across multiple species." "I was just defending myself." "You were demonstrating apex predator dominance behavior." "There is a difference." He sat down across from me looking genuinely troubled. "I don't want people to be scared of me. I just wanted to get through training." And that right there was what made humans truly dangerous. They did not even understand their own threat level. But fear was not the only response Jake generated. Curiosity emerged too, particularly from the more academically minded students. A Vexnar named Quillix started joining Jake for meals, asking endless questions about Earth's ecology. A silicate called Bright Edge began requesting joint study sessions, fascinated by human problem-solving approaches. Even a cautious Aetherian Softwing started practicing combat forms near Jake, watching his movements with scientific interest. "Your species has no natural weapons," Quillix observed one day, her psychic voice resonating in our translators. "Yet you made yourselves the dominant force on your world." "How?" Jake thought about it, chewing something he claimed was called pizza. "I guess we just got really good at not dying," he said finally. "And then we got good at making tools. And then we got good at working together. And somewhere in there, we figured out that the thing trying to eat you today could be convinced to help you hunt tomorrow if you approached it right. You domesticated your predators. Bright Edge's crystalline structure actually shifted color with shock. Well, some of them. The ones that didn't work out, we just avoided or outcompeted until they left us alone. I was writing all of this down naturally. Jake had become my primary research focus. Not officially, but everyone knew. Other students started coming to me with questions about humans as if my 4 months of observation made me an expert. I was not an expert. I was just the only one taking notes while everyone else panicked. But I was learning, and what I learned filled me with a strange mixture of respect and primal terror. Humans were not the strongest species. Not the fastest, not the most durable, but they were persistent, adaptable, and apparently incapable of recognizing when they should give up. They looked at a planet full of things trying to kill them and said, "No thank you, I think I will survive anyway." And then they did. Jake noticed me staring and gave me that easy, harmless smile that I now knew was the expression of a species that had smiled at saber-toothed cats and ice ages and plagues, and somehow came out on top every single time. "Something on your mind, Velthar? Just wondering what else your species is capable of that you consider normal." He laughed. "Probably best not to think about it too hard. We're honestly pretty average where we come from." That was what worried me most. If Jake Brennan was average, what did exceptional look like? I submitted my final report on day 30 of Jake's enrollment. Commandant Zixthrel read it in silence, her exoskeleton completely still in that way that meant she was either deep in thought or plotting someone's demise. When she finally looked up, her optical sensors focused on me with uncomfortable intensity. "This report concludes that humans represent a Category 10 threat level despite originating from a Category 5 Deathworld," she said slowly. "You are aware this will cause significant upheaval in Council classifications?" "Yes, ma'am. I am also aware that it is accurate." She tapped one crystalline finger against my datapad, the sound like chimes in a windstorm. "You have documented 17 separate instances of human capability that exceed our initial projections. Your recommendations include restructuring our entire combat curriculum, implementing species-specific safety zones, and mandatory education for all staff on human cultural concepts of restraint and proportional response. The alternative is more hospitalized Crovenians, ma'am." She made a sound that my translator rendered as a sigh, though her species did not technically breathe. "Approved. Submit this to the Galactic Council with my endorsement. And Velthar, good work. Terrifying work, but good work." The report went out on official channels that afternoon. By evening I had received 43 messages from xenobiologists across the galaxy, each one expressing some variation of "you cannot be serious," or "please tell me this is an elaborate joke." It was not a joke. The implications were staggering. If humans were this capable at standard development, what happened when they gained access to galactic technology, advanced medicine, enhanced training? We had accidentally invited a species of natural-born survivors into our most elite combat institution, and given them access to thousands of years of accumulated tactical knowledge. The Galactic Council was going to lose their collective minds. But that was politics. And I was a researcher. I cared more about understanding than policy. I found Jake in the observation deck 3 days later, staring out at the stars. He had finished top of his class in the monthly evaluations, which surprised absolutely nobody at this point. What did surprise people was that he had deliberately scored just high enough to win, never demonstrating his full capabilities, still holding back, always holding back. "Can I ask you something?" I settled into a seat beside him. My forearms folding in a relaxed posture I had learned signaled non-aggression to humans. "Sure, Velthar. That punch, the one that started all of this. Why did you finally respond to Thaxamul? You had ignored him for days." Jake was quiet for a moment, watching a supply ship drift past the viewport. "He wasted my food," Jake said simply. "I grew up with 3 brothers. You learn pretty quick that you do not mess with someone's meal. That is just basic respect, you know?" I asked him politely to apologize. He chose violence instead. "So you gave him violence?" I gave him a reasonable response to his unreasonable behavior. Jake shrugged. "Could have been worse. Could have used my left hand. That one has a better cross." I felt my mandibles click nervously. He was joking. Probably joking. Humans had this thing called humor that often sounded like threats. "Do you know what the other species call you now?" I asked. "I have heard a few names. The Quiet Catastrophe is my personal favorite. Does it bother you?" "Nah." Jake smiled. That same easy expression that no longer fooled me for a second. "They will get used to us eventually." Humans are good at making friends once people stop assuming we are harmless. He stood, stretching in that casual way that I now knew could transition into explosive violence in a fraction of a second. Besides, there are supposed to be 15 more human students arriving next month. Academy is going to get real interesting. My datapad nearly slipped from my hands. 15 more.
Yep. Whole training cohort.
Command figured if I did okay they would send more. He started walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Velthar, thanks for not treating me like a monster. You are good people. He left, and I sat there in the observation deck staring at my notes, my reports, my carefully documented evidence of humanity's capabilities. 15 more. I opened a new file and began typing. Advisory to future Academy administrators. A survival guide. Item 1. Humans are not fragile. Repeat this until you believe it. Their appearance is camouflage, nature's most elaborate trap. Item 2. When a human says they are holding back, they are not exaggerating. They are describing their baseline operational state. Item 3. Do not, under any circumstances, mess with their food. Item 4. Everything you think you know about Deathworld classifications is wrong. Gravity and atmospheric pressure are not the only measures of a hostile environment. Sometimes the hostility teaches adaptation instead of specialization. Item 5. If a human smiles at you after you have made them angry, apologize immediately. You are in more danger than you realize. Item 6. They will surprise you. Constantly. Get used to it. Item 7. Most importantly, remember that they walk to the top of their food chain without claws, without armor, without venom, without any of the advantages their predators possessed. They did it with stubborn persistence, creative problem-solving, and an apparently pathological refusal to accept extinction. Do not underestimate them. Do not assume you understand their limits. Do not test their patience. And whatever you do, do not knock over their lunch. I saved the file, attached it to my official report, and sent it to every training facility in the galactic network. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of biological beings. Somewhere out there, Earth continued spinning, producing more humans who would eventually make their way to stations like this one, bringing with them capabilities that looked like weaknesses until you made the fatal mistake of believing it. Jake Brennan had taught us that lesson with a single punch. I had a feeling we were going to learn many more lessons in the months and years to come. The galaxy was about to get very interesting indeed, and I was going to document every single moment of it, for science. And survival, mostly survival. This incident taught the Academy a critical lesson. Strength is not always visible, and danger is not always loud. Evolution does not reward size or weapons alone. It rewards adaptability, persistence, and restraint. Humans survived not because they were the strongest, but because they learned, endured, and refused to quit.